So today is day 3 of my 2011 reflections. I chose not to do resolutions in 2012, just reflecting back on 2011 because it was such an eventful year in my life. Although today is the 3rd video, it's actually step 2 in the process to overcoming chapters in your life. Yesterday was about reality, which was about looking in the mirror and completely owning everything that's going on around you. Not trying to fix anything yet, just owning it and taking steps in the right direction, the next direction. So first of all, thank you to everybody that responded. We had an enormous amount of hits on the video yesterday and an incredible amount of responses, which shows me this. The reality that you're going through, many people are going through, you're not the only one, and especially in the business market right now, since that's specifically what I talked about yesterday. There's a lot of people that are hurting right now. So we can either be afraid to talk about it, and then eventually you can go through what I went through and your doors can shut, or you can talk about it while you're going through it and be real with it, and you might find other people that are going through it as well, and maybe you can help each other through it. So I would encourage you, from the feedback that I got yesterday through text messages and Facebook messages and emails, to talk about it, talk to each other if you're struggling in your business or your ministry or your organization or your family right now. Just get real. So today, step 2 is to realign. And there is a verse in Matthew that is Matthew 6:34, and it says, "Give your entire attention to what God is doing right now, and don't get worked up about what may or may not happen tomorrow. God will help you deal with whatever things come up when the time comes." So yesterday, I told you how I had went through an enormous amount of growth in our company, and it had started to suffocate me personally, spiritually, financially, physically, just about in every single direction. And in April, we shut the company down and took our clients to another firm. That was last year. The next step in that process was realigning, and it was asking God, what exactly is it that you want me to do with this? I know that every lesson that you give me is for a purpose and for a reason. So I asked 3 questions, and the first questions that I asked are, how did I get here? And I went through a couple of years actually worth of when I really loved what I was doing, and what did I really love about it? Why did I love it? What did I really not like about the things that had happened over the last year? What were the things that I was good at? What were the things that I was not so good at? And what could I have done differently to make the situation have a different outcome? Total side note on that, don't beat yourself up on the what could I have done differently, because when I get through with the 5 days here, you'll see that it had to happen exactly the way that it happened, because where I am today is an amazing place and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So everything had to happen, and all the bad stuff had to happen, and even though there are things I could have done differently, I definitely wouldn't have changed any of it. I also had to ask myself, who am I? And luckily I had spent some time with God a few months before, and I had really, really reflected on who am I. So here's what I came up with. And the first step to this is removing every label that you've ever had put on yourself. Like, I had to dig way, way, way deep, back to my past. And I had to dig up some yucky things like unworthy, and I definitely had to remove the label of addict and alcoholic and homeless. But I also had to remove the label of mom and CEO and wife and whatever you wanted to call me. I had to remove all the negative things that were said about me. I even had to remove all the positive things that were said about me, because the things that are said about us are from somebody's own mirror and not always God's mirror. So after I spent a couple of weeks going through this process of removing every label that I had on me, here's what I came up with. So who Stephanie Tillman is a storyteller, a motivator, a promoter, a creator, and a visionary. If I'm doing those 5 things, God can use me in many, many ways in life, and it's not just one job description. If I'm those 5 things, I'm going to be a better wife, I'm going to be a better mom, I'm going to be better at ministering to others, because I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to be complete, and I'm going to be whole. This is what God designed me for in the beginning, before all the labels walked into my life and the world flawed me, and this is who I've always been in Jesus. I just didn't know that's who I was in Jesus. So when I stood in the mirror and I started reflecting, and we talked about that yesterday, I saw some things that I didn't like. And that didn't surprise me because I was used to seeing things that I didn't like. But what really surprised me was when I looked in the mirror, I saw things that I loved about myself. And it was maybe the first time in my life that I was able to be in a very broken place and see so much beauty in that, and see the character that God had built in me, and see how far He had birthed me, and to understand that every single thing that was bad, everything that was bad, had produced such an amazing character in me. Am I perfect? Man, I am so far from it. As a matter of fact, I'll show my shirt later, but I'm not striving for perfection. What I'm learning is to be really engaged in the rough edges of life, or the torn edges, as Michelle Gressel would say. Check her out on Facebook if you haven't met her yet. I learned that I was strong. I learned that I was confident. I learned that I had a respect for people that have walked the path before me, and I knew how to ask for help. I learned that the more broken I was, the more beautiful I was. I learned a lot about myself in that reflection time. And so I added all those pieces together. Who am I? How did I get here? And what did I learn about myself? And between April and May of last year, I spent time, pulling down the company. We had to pull everything out of the office, sold some stuff. When you walk away from a company that was already going into debt, you walk away with a lot more debt because you have contracts and obligations and clients, and all of a sudden you don't have employees to help you with any of it. So April was a very difficult month for me. But even during that month, there were days when I knew that I had a lot that needed to be accomplished, but I just paused for a second, and I just kept asking God, what is it that you want of me? You have my full attention. What is it that you want of me? Sometime between the end of April and May, I heard God speak to me. And I was actually kind of offended by what I heard Him say. He said, start with the shirts. Now, for those of you that know the end of this story, or where we're at now, you'll know that that makes complete sense. But from where I was sitting, God had just spent an awful lot of time showing me this huge process of storytelling branding, and He'd spent a lot of time investing in me in business, and showing me all these tools of how to incorporate people's stories into their branding. And I mean, it's a huge process, and it takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money to be able to put that process in place for organizations. And I was so sure that's where He was going to take me. When He said start with the shirts, I was kind of like, are you serious, God? You're talking to me, right? Because this Stephanie Tillman, you've taken her through all this stuff. I cannot even begin to comprehend how you just want me to start with the shirts. But I was obedient. I was in a place where I was just listening, and I was realigning, and I was keeping my eyes open. And through a series of circumstances of just walking through doors and saying yes, to some meetings that didn't make sense, to some networking opportunities that were like, what am I going to get out of that? Something beautiful started to emerge. We created this new project called Storytellers by Icros. And essentially, that campaign is based around the chapters of people's lives, and it's kind of taken the whole big idea of storytelling branding that we could do for large organizations, and putting it into a very simplistic format. Well, I thought I was going to be launching that on Monday, May 23rd. I had a group assembled. We were coming together. We were getting ready to kind of rebirth what God had asked me to do, or what at least I had thought that He'd asked me to do. And the weekend before that Monday, God had asked me to go on a media fast, and He'd never asked that of me before, so I said yes. What's really amazing about that is Sunday, May 22nd, is when a huge F5 tornado ripped through Joplin, Missouri. There were actually over 161 people that lost their lives, countless houses, businesses. The city was just ripped apart in half. Well, I saw little pieces of it because I saw a little bit on Facebook, but I didn't see the same thing that the news had put out there because I wasn't watching the news. Well, Monday morning when I thought I was going to start this new project called Storytellers by iCros, I walked into a coffee house and I saw a newspaper that said Joplin shredded. And man, I don't even know how to explain what God did at that moment, but he just reached into my heart and I knew there was something that I should do. So I went and I sat really still and I asked God, hi Bethany.
Hello.
And I asked God to show me what it was that he wanted me to do. And his response back was, well, who are you? And luckily I'd spent time getting to know that piece of me, and it's storyteller, motivator, promoter, creator, and visionary. And he said, well, that's what I want you to do. Now here's my conversation with God again, just all that crazy talk. Are you sure you know what you're talking about, God? Those 5 things have nothing to do with the disaster zone. I know nothing about disaster relief. And he said, well, what do you know better than anybody else? And that verse that I shared yesterday came back, Romans 5:3-5. But yet we rejoice in our suffering, because we know suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope will never disappoint us. And what I knew at that moment was that somebody had to be bold enough, that had gone through enough personal disasters in their own life, to go stand face to face with people that had lost so much, look them in the eye and say, this is not the end of anything. This is actually the beginning of the most beautiful chapter that you'll ever know. But you have to find a way to rejoice in the suffering. You have to see that God is in this. It is not a punishment at all, but it could very possibly be your greatest gift. If you could embrace this moment, there's nothing that you can't accomplish in life. So, my realignment was starting to be birthed. We printed 1,000 shirts. Remember God said start with the shirts? The shirts were a little bit unique. They had the word Hope Station on the front, and they had a piece of paper on the back. We went down with 1,000 shirts and 1,000 Sharpies in the middle of a disaster zone. We set up a stage so there could be music where people could come and just sit and heal their spirits, where kids could come and play and their parents could just breathe. But more importantly, we gave people a way to outlet the pain. The chapters started on the back of shirts just being written, I survived, or God bless Joplin, or maybe one of my favorites, which is Screw You Tornado, because getting that pain out is a real piece in the process to healing. So tomorrow I'm actually going to talk about renewal and what happened in these last 7 months that has not only renewed my spirit, but also shown me so much more about my character and shown me so much more about the character and the strength of others. If I could leave you with a challenge today, it would be to sit down and ask God what it is that he wants you to do next with the reality that you faced yesterday. Don't make any moves yet, because what we're going to talk about tomorrow, which is renewal, he's going to take what he shows you today, or over the course of the next couple of weeks, and in your renewal time, he's going to grow that in a way that you couldn't even imagine, you couldn't even picture. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it God's perfect vision and make sure that it's not your perfect vision. So from the Hope Station, part of what you'll see tomorrow and the next couple of days are a few extra shirts were birthed after that. And the one that I'm wearing actually says, I'm not trying to be perfect. And if you were to read the back of it, not actually turn around, you will be able to read all of it. It actually says, Bethany, what's it say? Come over here so that our audience can meet Bethany. She is a social media guru. What's the back of my shirt say, Bethany? Because I can't read it myself today.
If we are always striving for perfection, we may be missing out on the best part. The only thing perfect is the journey in Jesus.
There you go. So tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit more about the journey, a little bit more about Jesus, and talk about how renewing your spirit can help you continue to face the reality and realign, and eventually it's going to get you to the place that's kind of unimaginable and probably the place that God's always wanted you to be, but it's going to take a lot of hard work to get there. See you tomorrow.